It's time once again for Western New York Athletics High School Football Weekly, hosted by Frank Wolf with Dick Gallagher from WGRZ High School Sports. Today's show is brought to you by Scroy Financial of West Seneca, the Paul Wolf Agency in Kenmore, CSA Prep Star, the North End Bar and Grill, Cipriano Realtors, BuffaloSportsPage.com, and by Southtown Trophies in Orchard Park, New York, a proud sponsor of the Buffalo Sports Page Athlete of the Week Award, announced each week on BuffaloSportsPage.com.
Hi, I'm Pat Scroy, president of Scroy Financial. We've been helping people realize their financial dreams for nearly 50 years. Your goals may include building wealth for a comfortable retirement, protection from the burdens of long-term care, or leaving a legacy to your children and grandchildren. With all these diverse goals, retirement planning should not be a one-size-fits-all process, and at Scroy Financial it's not. Whether you are just getting started or nearing retirement, give us a call. Plan, protect, invest. It's your life. Scroy Financial can help.
There are good hands and great hands. Hi, I'm Paul Wolf. We all know that good hands usually turn into losers. When it comes to all your insurance needs, our hands are unbeatable.
Call the Wolf at 835-9653 today.
Welcome to WNYAthletics High School Football Weekly. I am Frank Wolf, joined by my good friend Dick Gallagher from WGRZ High School Sports. Dick, it's a pleasure of mine to have you here with me again today. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure, always a pleasure. You're welcome, of course. We are here. It's week 7, the final week for a lot of classes. They'll play out the rest of their schedule today, this weekend, except for Class AA and D. But A, B, and C wrap up this Friday and Saturday, and the playoff picture is starting to become a little bit clearer than it was a week ago. A number of teams that we thought should make the playoffs are on the outside looking in. And then there's teams like West Seneca West that's like they've been waiting all year for this. You knew how good they were, and it's no surprise that they're here. We could start off with that. They're just a fantastic team to watch.
Well, I think that when you take a look at West Seneca West and West Seneca East, they're 1 and 2 in the Buffalo News High School poll. They both deserve it. And I really think that those two teams could possibly, whoever wins, they could play again for the championship of the A. They both dominate on both sides of the ball. And I just give a little edge to West Seneca West because their offense, their defense got 3 players that are all Western New York candidates. And it's going to be a fun smash mouth football. And again, West Seneca East, their line on both sides is good. And I don't know if West has played a team with both sides of the line that have been playing that excellent ball.
They haven't played a team that balanced on both sides of the ball since last year, South Park, I would have to say, at the stadium. And if you remember, South Park had them beat for a couple of excellent Matt Myers plays in the second half. I mean, he really led them to that big win over South Park, and it was a big win for them. Obviously, it led to a state championship. If you're Coach Vestola, if you're Coach Marino, this game means a lot for school pride and that sort of thing. But in the big picture, there's a good chance you're going to see that team again in 2-3 weeks. What do you do? What do you do this Friday night if you're Coach Marino? Do you hold back on certain plays? Do you just run plays that you're not normally going to run?
I don't think either one of them would hold back. And if they did hold back, they'd be getting the chirping of the fans, mainly because both coaches are outstanding. They like to play physical football. And I don't think that they're going to be worried about any other game except that one. And then if you look at the rivalry, which is key, and I think West is leading 26-21 in the games, but the East has got better, and Jimmy Marino has an outstanding record. Mike Pistola in 3 years has a state championship. So that's going to be a fun game to watch.
So you're saying just play the game. Don't worry about scouts. Don't worry about game film. Just go out there, play the game, and let the chips fall where they may, and worry about week 10 or 11 in week 10 or 11. But for now, week 7, you go out, you finish the job, and you go undefeated.
Right, and I think both teams want that, which would give them momentum going into the playoffs. But even if one of the two are going to lose, it still means that both of them are going to be with excellent seeds and both of them are going to be competitive in the playoffs.
Is this a trap game, so to speak, for West Seneca West in this regard? You haven't lost in over a year. You have scored as many points as anybody. I mean, your offense is amazing. Your defense is super stingent, very tough to play against. They don't give up a lot of yards, much less points. Do they have more to lose this game than West Seneca East does? West Seneca East, they were under the radar, so to speak, at the beginning of the year. Nobody really knew that they were going to be this good. I certainly didn't. I can admit that. I thought they would be a number 2, number 3 seed, somewhere behind South Park and Star Point. They're number 1. They beat them both. Does West Seneca East have more to lose Friday, or does West Seneca West have more to lose in that game?
I wouldn't even look at it as more to lose. The fact that they're undefeated going into the 7th game, playing a rivalry game, there's going to be thousands at West Seneca East for that game, and I think that's what kids play for. And when you're taking a look at the atmosphere and the momentum that both of them have going into this game, no matter what the outcome is, they're still going to have a lot of momentum going into the playoffs. But they want this game, particularly the kids, because it's bragging rights forever.
Certainly. Who is going to be the difference in this game? Obviously, you can name 7 or 8 kids from West Seneca West, but with West Seneca East, it all comes down to Sean Dolak. And you kind of, I somewhat feel bad for the kid. I don't know how much more help he has, other than he's got a stout offensive line and a really good defensive line as well. But who else can help Dolak, out in this particular game? Like who am I looking at?
Well, I think that you have to look at the line. Nick Ham has excelled on both sides, but 5 or 6 of the linemen are outstanding. Then if you look at West Seneca West, I think one of the keys is Kyle Haydish, safety, wide receiver, and Brian Ball. They're on the radar screen. They don't get as much publicity as the quarterbacks. And I think Maurice Robinson is coming over from Sweet Home. Didn't play the first couple of games. Has lit it up in the last 3. So when you take a look at the quarterback, even with Sean Dolak, as good as he is and as versatile he is, I think West has an edge at quarterback with Maurice.
I would have to agree. I still think it's going to be an exciting game. You think it's going to be a lot closer than last week's West Seneca West Niagara Wheatfield game?
Well, some people were saying that Niagara Wheatfield had an opportunity.
Some people or one guy?
No. Some people thought the way that Parks was playing, the Falcons were playing, that they could compete. But then when you take a look at the score, it was 15-0, I believe. And
42.
That was a statement that they made.
Yeah.
But when you take a look at West Seneca East win, and by a significant number of points, and that was a statement. So when you look at it, I don't think that there's a better game. I think Cheechwagon and Maryvale is going to be excellent. Another rivalry game with Fredonia, Brockton, playing, at home with Dunkirk. They're all good. When you take a look at the rivalry, and even if you take the rivalry North Tonawanda, this year Tonawanda's got a chance of beating them, which they haven't done too recently. Albion Medina Albion's going to be in the playoffs. Medina's not. Medina would love to upset them. So some of those rivalry games are going to be fun. And as I mentioned before, it's bragging rights. You can lose 8 games if you're St. Joe's or Canisius, but if you beat Canisius or St. Joe's, that's a good season because you get bragging rights.
Well, rivalry week kicked off last week, week 6, when St. Joe's hosted. No, 2 weeks ago when St. Joe's hosted Canisius.
Right.
So really, the rivalry's already started. Is that the biggest rivalry in Western New York in terms of football, Canisius and St. Joe's?
I think overall, I think the one thing that hurts Western New York football was when the city merged or went in with a section and they dropped the Thanksgiving game. And if you look at that, they had about 100 years of playing on Thanksgiving. I lived in Boston 6 years. Every Thanksgiving went to a game, and I went to two separate schools in Boston. One was Boston Latin, one was Boston English. They would play in front of 40,000 people. It was just unbelievable. Everywhere in Boston, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, when it comes here, no one's going to a game, which was a sad commentary into why the Harvard Cup didn't work out something. Then when you take a look at that, when they merged in 2010, 4 teams played football for 100 years. Each one of those teams dropped football. How can you play for 100 years of football and then drop within the next 3 years? It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it's tough. So last week there were a couple of good games before we get back into rivalries for this week. And we'll talk about Maryville and Cheektowaga. We'll talk about Fredonia Brockton and Dunkirk, Ken West, Ken East maybe a little bit, and TNT, of course. Tonawanda hasn't beaten North Tonawanda since I had hair. That's how long it goes. So I'm rooting for Joe Kelly this week, though. I love Eric Jancy, excellent coach, and NT's a storied program, but I would love to see Tonawanda finally get a big win in that rivalry. I think it would be nice for those kids for how hard they worked. And not to take anything away from the NT kids, because they worked their tails off too, but it's nice to see it back a little back and forth, you know.
Yeah.
And one of these days, who knows? Maybe Joe's will be Canisius.
Hey, it could be this year.
Very well, it could be this year.
There's only 3 teams in the league.
Yeah.
The odds are that they'll be playing each other either in a playoff game or in a championship game.
Well, let's talk about last Saturday. I saw you out at St. Joe's for St. Francis. I got there. St. Francis was up 7-0, but as soon as I looked down at the sideline, I saw Jacob Ritz being helped off the field, and that was very concerning to me. St. Joe's took advantage of Ritz's absence, if you will. Although the kid that came in from last year, Tiger, he did well. He didn't, he didn't look out of place at all.
No, Dawson Tiger has played quarterback for a couple of years for the Frannies. He did very, very well. What hurt the Frannies was, I think, there was an interception by Xavier.
That block punt
70 yards.
was tough.
That also, their special teams were horrendous.
Yes.
And they cannot play like that because all 3 schools, Canisius, St. Joe's, and St. Francis, are giving up a tremendous number of points. I think one's got 171, Canisius, St. Francis and St. Joe's are over 200. And when you give up 200 points in 6 games, your defense is lacking. When you take a look at some of the players that came to play for St. Joe's in that game won by the Marauders 43-41, you look at a freshman, Jimmy Scott.
Phenomenal game.
Outstanding player.
Phenomenal game.
He's got a future ahead of him. Micah Brown is an outstanding athlete. They have him playing on both sides of the ball. I think he kicks off. He doesn't take a rest. He might even be selling popcorn at halftime. But they gain a play. But I think the edge for the Marauders were the line. Tyler Doty, Cole Gambino, Will McDonald. When you look at the size, 6'5", 300, 6'6", 350, and 6'2", 280. And they pretty much dominated in closing out that game, just running the ball. If that line plays the extent that they can and should, they could win the Muncie Run Playing Championship, and the winner of that will be playing for a state championship.
Sure. Rich did return to the game, however, in the second half. Didn't he have like a 95-yard touchdown pass? So the kid's phenomenal. Only a sophomore, deserves all the accolades that he's been getting. He's worked his tail off, and St. Francis has something very special there to kind of maybe take a little bit, maybe take their piece of the Monsignor back, because it's been Canisius and St. Joe's the last couple of years.
Right.
So I think they took a little bit back, or said, you know what, hey, we're still here. We haven't gone anywhere. If any team's reloaded, it's been St. Francis. So we'll see what happens. I know that they're not happy about the loss. Obviously, the special teams was a big problem for them on Saturday. We'll have to see what happens, and maybe St. Francis gets another shot at the Marauders. Who knows? We'll have to see.
I'll tell you one thing. Ritz, by the time he's a junior or senior, he'll be a candidate for all West New York. He's already a candidate this year.
Not now.
His legacy could be that he could be the overall career passing leader, and he would then have to pass Jerry Hickson, who played for 4 years for St. Francis, and now is playing out in California, junior college, Sacramento. So there's a lot of games left this year, and there's still yet the championship games for both section and the Catholics makes it interesting.
Absolutely. So Canisius gets St. Mary's this week. Timon has Joe's. And then O'Hara, Cardinal O'Hara, who can't play for the Monsignor Martin championship this year because they're on the bottom three. But they're welcoming a team from Baltimore, Maryland, a prestigious private school there called Gilman School. And wouldn't you know that former Hawks standout Nick Bach, who graduated from O'Hara, I'm not sure of the year, I want to say 96, 97. Anyways, he graduated, went to Canisius, did a lot of he's had a lot of stops on the coaching circuit. He got into coaching, was at UB, coached a kid there named Shaq Dudley, who is now the coach at Cardinal O'Hara High School. Well, Nick went down to Georgia, found some success down there with a school called Mountain View. He guided them to, they're like the large school, in the large school division down there, just outside of Atlanta they were, and he got them their first playoff win in the school's history. And then he takes the Gilman job. And they're not having a good year by records. They're like 0-6 right now. But Nick and Shaq talked, and Nick's bringing his boys up from Gilman. These were called I'm not sure what they're called. They're called the Bears or what they're called, but Gilman, whatever. They're on their way up to Western New York this weekend. So they're at O'Hara. My buddy Dean Adams will be there calling the game on the PA. But it's a nice reunion, and it's good to see that kids that, maybe playing isn't in their future, but coaching is. And Nick took that to the extreme, and he's doing a phenomenal job. We'd love to have him back in Western New York, but he's doing his thing in Baltimore right now and raising a family, so that's what he's going to do. But I would like to welcome him back to Western New York this weekend, and hopefully they have a good game against O'Hara.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at League A, the winner of that will play for the state championship. League B with St. Mary's, Timon, and Cardinal O'Hara, they'll be playing for a championship, but it won't have the
significance or
ability to. The teams won't have the ability to move on for a state championship.
O'Hara has had a good year. I think we'd all agree.
They have some quality players.
Yeah, they do. They do. From Jermaine Haynes, who we've talked about a lot on this program. He's in double-digit touchdowns now. They've got Brandon Brodniks is a heck of an athlete, good football player. So they do have some players. The quarterback Masters moves around the pocket pretty good.
He's good. And then Bird, the lineman, he's being
Boyd. Boyd.
Boyd. He's being recruited by some of the colleges. He's outstanding, and they got I'm blocking on the pronunciation of his name, but he's a linebacker. Vermiex, and he is a tackling machine. So with the Baltimore team coming up, they better be ready to play the Hawks.
Oh, they better be. No question about it. So we'll check in on Monsignor Martin a little bit later. A couple other big games from Week 6 that we talked about. Ken West in a must-win game against Hamburg. They got it done on Saturday. Williamsville East was all over North Tonawanda. No big surprise. Grand Island thumped Kenmore East. Kenmore East had a chance to maybe sneak into the playoffs, but the Vikings ended their hopes there. Down in Class D, CSP, who had already played Maple Grove and beat them pretty good in Week 2, they got out to a 25-0 lead on Maple Grove. And to Maple Grove's credit, the Red Dragons came back, and the game was 25-20. So CSP, I don't know what happened in the second half there or what Maple Grove did different, but we had talked that it's difficult to beat a team twice in the same season. There's a good chance those teams may meet again. And if I was Maple Grove, I'd have a lot more confidence heading into a possible championship game at New Era Field with CSP.
Well, I think with Chris at quarterback and going into the season, Chris was going to be a running back. Tanner was going to be the quarterback. They switched Tanner to the wide receiver, and he's scored 7 touchdowns total in the game a couple of weeks ago. And if you take a look at Chris, he's got double digits, I think, touchdowns, passing touchdowns. So with those two athletes, and they don't have a lot of, I think, going into the season, they only had 21 players for the Red Dragons, and particularly with all the politics on that. Yeah. But they came to play, and
absolutely,
they gave some credibility and confidence to their players by coming back in that game.
Absolutely. It gives them reason to believe. Fredonia got by Tonawanda. We know Tonawanda's been playing a little bit better this year than they had in years past, but Fredonia blanks them 22-0. Another big game. Obviously, we haven't even talked about this one yet. Bennett and OP. Orchard Park gets by the Tigers 23-22. Incredible game there. Clarence gets by Hutch Tech, pretty much ending their playoff hopes and keeping Clarence's hopes alive. Dunkirk, 36-14 win over Burgard. That was a nice win for them. The Lackawanna, 28-26 win over Medina was a huge win for the Steelers.
And Cavanis and the wide receiver, I think McDonough or McDougall, they scored in the last minute to be able to get that game. The Dunkirk-Fredonia game this weekend is going to match Pontivus, Cleckley, running back for over 1,000 yards, and Joel Colton for Fredonia, who's got, I think, 992 yards. And between those two, it's going to be smashed mouth football. The thing that hurt Fredonia the most is they lost of Taiwan Wright in the third game of the season. If you put Wright and Cleckley back there, it's impossible.
For Dunkirk, yes. For Dunkirk, he went out.
Dunkirk. It's impossible to stop them. But now when you get in that game, and the fact it's going to be at Fredonia, it's going to be rivalry, and they don't like each other. They just want to play each other.
You say throw the records out, but it's tough not to look at those records. I heard this is the first time in 90-year history in this game that they've ever come in both undefeated at this point in the season.
Right.
That's amazing.
Okay. So when you take a look at it, for years Fredonia really were very competitive. They had, Dave Ball, the coach, his son. Then when you take a look at Dunkirk, they were, toward the bottom of the barrel. Then all of a sudden, Mike Serratori 2 years ago turned the switch on, and they've dominated, and they upset Cheektowaga in the championship game a couple of years ago.
Absolutely, and Maryville too. Didn't they beat Maryville the week before? Okay. Star Point gets by South Park 21-20. So that sets the table for A3, where you got West Seneca East, Star Point, and then South Park. What that did was now South Park has to go up and play at Grand Island. That's a 2-7 matchup there. That's a tough game to start out. But, South Park's been battle tested for years. They're not going to be intimidated at all, but still, you got that 2-7 mystique to it.
When you look at the Star Point and South Park game, you really got to give a lot of credit to Al Carbonaro. They were down in that game by 14 points. They got dominated by West Seneca East, which then took them out of the first 5 in the poll. Then all of a sudden now they come back after a 14-point deficit, and
Aaron Chase?
Yeah. He was the kicker too, and he got the 3 points. Then if you take a look at the South Park kicker, unfortunately he was not eligible to play. But the bottom line is, Star Point came back. They got their confidence back, and that's going to help them not just in the game with Lockport this weekend, but also in the playoffs.
Absolutely. So, talking about A, we know West Seneca West, Grand Island, and West Seneca East are the top 3 seeds. Their schedule is complete for Week 8 playoffs. Jamestown will come up to West Seneca West. As we mentioned, South Park will go to Grand Island. Kenmore West goes to West Seneca East. And then Star Point goes to Riverside to take on the McKinley Max in a 4-5 matchup. That'll be an interesting game. McKinley, they've got a lot of playmakers on that side of the ball, particularly Kyra Fields, who just had 300-something yards on the ground. Phenomenal performance. Tavon Martin, who's back in school, who left Sweet Home to go over there. You put those two guys together, you can't count them out. Star Point's, they got a game. This is going to be a game for them. And I was talking about McKinley for quite a bit now. Are they playing at the level that they should be? Are they better than what the record shows? But the last couple of weeks they've been putting up 40, 50 points. So
I think they won 4 games in a row. When you take a look at Micah Harris was the
interim coach there.
New head coach. He was the interim head coach when they started the season. And if you take a look at what he was able to do, And reading as far as what he did was basically he just interacted with the kids and said, look, what plays do you like? How are we going to be able to be successful? They lost the first 2 games against 2 quality teams, but now they've won 4 in a row. They're going to be a tough out in the playoffs, particularly with what we said, Kaya and Taiwan.
Yeah. Now we do know that for Class B now, we know that Pioneer, Albion, and the winner of the Dunkirk-Fredonia game are going to be the top 3 seeds. The Maryville-Cheektowaga game this Friday, another storied rivalry. The loser of that game drops all the way down to a 7. So they're going to end up having to go down to Dunkirk or Fredonia, it would appear, for week 1. And that's, the playoffs started for Maryville and Cheektowaga. They start this week.
Right, and when you take a look at it, Maryville's been looking for that game, having lost to Cheektowaga by a point in overtime, and they have dominated every team that they played. And Rashad Law,
Pioneer.
Pioneer.
Except for Pioneer, though.
Except for Pioneer,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Rashad Law is outstanding. They have an outstanding trio of defensive linemen led by Sincere, Middlebrooks, and then you look at the other pieces on that team. That game is going to be smash mouth football. That game is going to have an overflowing crowd because it's a town rivalry. And whoever wins that game is going to be in much better shape for the playoffs than having to go either to Fredonia or Dunkirk. And then plus, you go from not from the outhouse to the penthouse, but you go from being in a position of being second in the league to a point where you're 7. That has tremendous implications for playoffs.
So I would imagine the loser of Maryville-Cheektowaga, or the winner of Maryville-Cheektowaga, could be a 4 seed. So they'll get a playoff game out of this.
Right.
And then who knows? It looks like either Dunkirk or Fredonia would come up to play them week 1. So it's only going to get it's tough right now. Right now it gets tough. Whether you're Cheektowaga or Maryville, I know they've had Newport, the 2 of them in the last couple of weeks, and East Aurora, Holland, or whatever. So they haven't really played any teams with a lot of bite. But that'll change this week.
That'll change big time. But when you take a look at what Coshonville does with running and passing the ball, just opens that up. And then against Pioneer, they dropped an awful lot of passes. They can't afford to do that this game because Cheektowaga has 5 shutouts. They've only given up 33 points. Those are the points that Pioneer scored against them.
So I've seen both games. I've seen them. I use them as a measuring stick. Maryville, to me, just couldn't get their offense on the field against Pioneer, whereas Cheektowaga had their chances. They had their chances. Maryville just couldn't sustain drives. Early in the first half, I believe it was Law who went for like an 80-yard touchdown, and then you might have had another big run before the end of the half. But Maryville, what they're going to have to do, if they do match up against Pioneer at some point, they're going to have to find a way to keep the offense on the field and keep Riggerman on the sidelines.
Right, and that's
same thing for Cheektowaga, I would imagine.
Cheektowaga. But one of the things is Connor Desiderio is only a junior, but I noticed in the last game he threw only like 8 passes, connected on 5. But when he plays against Cheektowaga, they're going to, with Cheektowaga's defense, they're going to have to open it up. And the key is being able for Connor to be able to connect with some of the wide receivers.
Yeah, Connor's obviously been one of the top performers in Western New York football for the last 2 years now. He needs this game for his confidence, too, to take it to another level. He needs to beat Cheektowaga, I think. I think that would go a long way for him and Maryville.
And actually, he started as a freshman, so this is his 3rd year. Yeah. And he'll be back as a senior. When you take a look at all the reps that he's got in 3 years, he's just got better and better. He's a heck of an athlete, good baseball player.
And he walks in, he goes up against Cheektowaga, he's got to deal with Bartnick, Conley Cup finalist. Keyshawn Beal for the 2nd straight year. Last year he was a Conley Cup finalist. He's only rushing for 100 yards a game and throwing for another 100 or 200 yards a game. So that's what he's had to deal with. So it hasn't been an easy game for them. And they had them beat last year. They had them beat at the stadium last year. They could play with Cheektowaga. What's the biggest difference? What would you say is the biggest difference right now between Maryvale and Cheektowaga? Is it Beal being able to not only find open receivers but also be able to take off and rush for first downs and more? I mean, is Beal the difference here?
I think he's the difference. But then when they played, I think it was Pioneer, they could have been playing this all along. He was a linebacker. And when you look at the energy that he exerts, just being quarterback, running the ball, getting the hits, passing the ball, if you take a look at it, it's like if Mike Fata still has Kishon, playing defense, you wonder if that takes away from the third, fourth quarter. But when you take a look at Kishon, he looks like a linebacker. He's just built like a rock. He'll be playing football somewhere in college next year.
How much does he remind you of like a Matt Eldridge from Cleve Hill a couple years ago? Does he remind you the same? They look.
Yeah, except
they play similar games.
Except Matt was a tackling machine,
right?
But he also ran the ball. The difference with Kishon is he can control the game, running, passing, and he's the quarterback. He's the guy that's going to make you go and make you win, or set you back. So I think that he is the difference in that game.
Sure, I agree with you. Down in C, what we know about C right now, we know Southwestern, if they win this weekend, they'll be the #1 seed. Who does Southwestern have this week? Did we take a look at that game yet? Cassadaga Valley. They're at Cassadaga Valley Falconer. That's not going to be an easy one.
With Robbie Penhollow, he's got about 850 yards rushing and double-digit tackles every game. Outstanding wrestler. And then Crabtree is also an outstanding player. I think the key is going to be Southwestern's defense. And Faison Manor and plus Cooper Panis, they've got some good athletes besides Cole Snyder and Alex Hart. But when you're playing Southwestern, you know that they're going to throw the ball 30, 34, 40 times, and half of those passes are probably going to be targeted toward Alex Hart. And I believe that if my math is right, he's kicked, I believe, like 35 consecutive PATs, besides setting the school record with career receiving yards and also receptions. So between those two, if Cleveland Hill and Southwestern come out of the C's and they're going to have another matchup at the stadium, it's just going to come down to the passing game, Southwestern, versus the running game, Cleveland Hill. Cleveland Hill's won the last two. This year, the Trojans have one thing that they want, to beat Cleve Hill or to beat whoever's representing the North, because you can't underestimate Wilson.
No.
And with,
you can't. Frericks and they got the other kid, Drew Westmoreland, is a tough runner.
Yep.
So we'll see what else Wilson has left in the tank. I know that that was a tough loss for them, that Cleve Hill game.
Right. But
Cleve Hill had a number of touchdowns taken away by penalties. I'm sure they'll get that cleaned up by the time playoffs roll around. But Wilson's a wild card here. They should not be forgotten about. They're going to have their chance. They're going to have something to say about the playoff picture and see. I don't know who they're going to get up from, who's going to come over and play them week 1. We'll have to wait and see. We're still waiting to find out Wilson will get a playoff game.
Right, and Stephen is not only an outstanding quarterback, he's also an outstanding DB linebacker. He can come up with double digits in tackles. And with Westmoreland, they only have 22, 23 on the team, but they come to play.
He's a good football player. Phenomenal athlete, the Frericks kid is. Talking about C North, Cleve Hill, obviously, and then Wilson, and then again C South. What do you make up of this Randolph-Frewsburg team? We just talked a little about Cassadaga Valley, but to me that C South seems to be the tougher of the two divisions after 6 weeks of football. Whoever comes out of C South, they're going to be extremely battle-tested and playoff ready for whoever comes out of the North.
The North End Bar and Grill in Kenmore is the perfect place for friends to get together, enjoy a great menu that includes all the local favorites like wings, roast beef on weck, and the best Friday fish fry in town. Serving daily specials like spaghetti and meatballs, flavorful hamburgers and barbecued ribs, and enjoy 12 beers on tap, including IPAs. The North End Bar and Grill, located at 2692 Elmwood Avenue near Girard. To order takeout or to reserve a table, give us a call at 877-9000 or visit us on the web at northendbarandgrill.com.
Today's show is brought to you by Scroy Financial of West Seneca, the Paul Wolf Agency in Kenmore, CSA Prep Star, the North End Bar and Grill, Cipriano Realtors, BuffaloSportsPage.com, and by Southtown Trophies in Orchard Park, New York, a proud sponsor of the Buffalo Sports Page Athlete of the Week Award, announced each week on BuffaloSportsPage.com.